I can see that the crowd got a little thicker. All right, folks, I am ridiculously excited to announce our next speaker on my birthday, no less. I'm going to say that all day because I get to announce Senator Mike Lee on my birthday. I just, want to put that out there. I could rattle off a list of his accomplishments. He's on the Judiciary Committee. He was elected in 2010. He stands for fiscal responsibility. He stands for constitutionalism and limited government. And I wish, and I'm just going to go ahead and do it now, I wish that the Show Me State was able to show Senator Mike Lee a little bit more support on the floor of the Senate the other day. And I'm going to say, out of the Show Me State senators, we don't have any in attendance, but we have Senator Mike Lee here today. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please help give me a big Missouri welcome to Senator Mike Lee?
Thank you. It's great to be in St. Louis, a city that knows how to win. And it's wonderful to be with a room full of conservatives today, especially today. I've been in the Senate now for 2.5 years. 2.5 years. I was 39 years old when I was elected. That made me the youngest member of the Senate. I introduced myself to my colleagues. When they would ask how old I was, I'd say I'm 39, but I read at the level of a 40-year-old, and they were all very impressed by that. I'm 42 now, and I'm still reading at the level of a 43-year-old. I always hope to stay ahead of the curve. When I first arrived, they didn't know quite what to do with me. The security guards standing outside the Senate chamber didn't think I looked like a senator, and so they would frequently stop and question me as I was trying to enter the Senate to cast my votes. Look, I'm a teetotaling kid from Utah. I'm not used to getting carded, and this was a new experience for me. As I would enter, I'd have to go through this exercise almost every time. I'll even show you what I had to do. I had to pull out my Senate ID, and it says United States Senator representing Utah, has my picture, my name, expiration January 3rd, 2017. I'm not sure whether that's when I personally expire or my term of office. But these two heavily armed gentlemen at the door to the Senate would look at it, examine it, make sure the tamper-resistant strip was intact. They'd look at each other, they'd shrug their shoulders and say, I guess we have to let them in. And I wondered, is this how my colleagues feel too? Maybe so. After a while, I discovered a shortcut to this little ritual. There's a pin, a lapel pin, that I have to wear whenever I'm on Capitol Hill. The Capitol Hill police force is trained to recognize that as an indicator that I'm a senator. And it's very efficient. I call it my sorry senator pin because when I get carded on my way into the Senate, I just point to the pin and they say, sorry, Senator, come on in. It works well. It works like a charm about 99% of the time. Every once in a while, it still fails. After I'd been there for quite a while, one day I was on the floor of the Senate, resting my arm ever so gently on my desk and thinking about how the next vote was going to proceed. See, each of our votes takes about 15 minutes to complete because they do it by roll call. One of the non-uniformed security personnel in the Senate came up to me at that exact moment and said, excuse me, sir, will you please not lean on the senator's desk? I thought it was strange that he said the senator's desk and not your desk or this desk, but I said, I'm terribly sorry, sir, it will not happen again. You see, they're very concerned about these desks because these desks, some of them are almost 200 years old, almost as old as some of my colleagues. And I said, it won't happen again. And then he said, are you with the minority? And I said, well, what do you mean, on this vote or the next? I don't always vote with my party. Sometimes they get it wrong. He said, no, do you work for the minority leader? And I said, well, the minority leader is our leader. And so I support him in that regard. What do you mean? He said, no, are you part of the minority leader's staff? And at that point, I realized he didn't get it. So I pointed to the sorry senator pin. Blank stare, didn't do a darn bit of good. So I still am not comfortable using my title, and so I mumbled my next sentence. I said, I'm Senator Lee. What? I said, okay, my name is Mike Lee. I represent a state called Utah. It's sort of squarish. It resembles a chair. It's in the Rocky Mountains. And at that point, he realized who I was, and all the color drained from his face, and he said in one hurried breath, my name is Steve. If you want to report me, I'm terribly sorry. And he ran for the door. I didn't want Steve to feel bad. I certainly didn't want him to get in trouble, so I chased after him, but he was too fast. So now, every time I pass Steve in the hall, I say, hi, Steve, and I smile and I wave, just so he knows there are no hard feelings and we're friends. Here's the problem. Only recently did it occur to me. His name's probably not Steve. I'm pretty sure it's Bob, and Steve's a guy he works with that he hates. I don't know. But look, here's the point of that story for me. I had to assert my right to be there that day. Yeah, even though it was a little difficult, it was awkward, I had to use my title. I had to assert my right to be there that day, and had I not done so, I would have lost something. I would have found myself getting hauled off in handcuffs. Some of my more senior colleagues might have waited a few minutes before telling them who I was. Had I failed to assert myself and my right to be there, my right to cast a vote that day, I would have lost something. That should stand as a lesson to us, not just those of us who serve in the United States Senate, but to all of us as citizens. We have certain rights that are ours, properly ours, just by who we are, by virtue of our citizenship in this great country. A lot of those rights are sufficiently well recognized and well regarded that they may well just be deemed something that can protect themselves. I would imagine if you get pulled over today by a member of the Missouri Highway Patrol, when they ask for your driver's license and registration and proof of insurance, they're probably not going to ask you for proof of where you went to church last Sunday. If they do call me, something has gone wrong at that moment. This is true because some of our rights are generally well followed, but there are others that are equally important that are sometimes disregarded and will not assert themselves for us. We have to assert those rights ourselves, and we have to do so aggressively. What are some of those rights? Well, one of the most important that I can think of, one of the most important but often disregarded rights that we have as Americans, is the right to live in a land where our national government has a limited purpose, and it has powers that James Madison appropriately described as few and defined, while those reserved to the states respectively and to the people are numerous and indefinite. That is a right that has been consistently overlooked. It's been thwarted over the last 75 years, and it just keeps getting worse. With our federal government now regulating everything from how many grams of riboflavin are listed as being contained in your breakfast cereal, to how many gallons of water your toilet can flush, what kind of light bulb you use. And it just keeps getting worse, and it keeps getting more personal. The federal government is now asserting the right and will begin aggressively exercising its authority that it supposes itself to have, to tell you where to go to the doctor and how to pay for it, to get into your very most personal decisions. We must, as citizens of this great republic, assert our right to live in a land that's free from an oppressive, distant national government. I found myself a few nights ago on the Senate floor in the middle of the night, all night, needing to lean on a desk. There were moments where we got a little tired. At those exact moments, we decided it was time to amp up the volume, to amp up the energy to amp up the discussion of the United States Constitution, that 226-year-old document that has fostered the development of the greatest civilization the world has ever known. You see, because it's the reinvigoration of those principles that are as true today as they were in 1787, as true as they were all the way back then, today, the answers still remain the same. But we have to assert them. We have to assert those rights. We have to remember why it is that we're our own country. We have to remember why it is that we don't pledge allegiance to the Union Jack. We have to remember why it is that we don't sing God Save the Queen. It's not just because we were ready to get rid of a monarchy. It's not just because it was inconvenient to have our national capital in London. A lot of it had to do with the fact that when our national capital was in London, we were subject to a large, distant national government that taxed us too much, that regulated us oppressively, that operated so far from the people that it was slow to respond to their needs. It was for those reasons that we decided to form our own country and to be a country where we would have a limited purpose national government, a federal government, where the sovereignty and the bulk of the authority would remain at the level of the people, reminding us all that we, the people, are the sovereigns. We are citizens, not subjects, and we have to assert those rights every single day. Before I close, I want to tell you a story that I first heard from a man named Emo Phillips. Glad some of you remember Emo. Emo Phillips one night was crossing a bridge that went across a river. It was a really high bridge. It was so high that he knew that anyone who fell off of it would die, even if they fell into the water. It was just that high. There was no traffic on the bridge that night. It was really dark, and he was walking across the bridge enjoying this leisurely stroll without a sound or a care in the world. He got halfway across the bridge, and he saw a man standing on the edge, outside the guardrail, holding on, looking like he was about to jump. Realizing that this was sufficiently high, that most likely this was an indication that this poor fellow was contemplating taking the unfortunate step of ending his life. He decided, I better stop and talk to this man. He said, I asked the man if he were religious, and he said yes, and I said, me too. He said, are you a Christian? And the man said, yes. And I said, me too. Which denomination? And he said, well, I'm a Baptist. Me too. Are you a Northern Baptist or are you a Southern Baptist? Well, I'm a Northern Baptist. Me too. Or are you a Northern Fundamentalist Baptist or a Northern Reformed Baptist? I'm a Northern Fundamentalist Baptist. Me too. Are you a Northern Fundamentalist Baptist Conference of 1857 or Northern Fundamentalist Baptist Conference of 1812? And he said, well, I'm Northern Fundamentalist Baptist Conference of 1857. And I said, die, you heretic, and I pushed him off. It's stories like those that remind us sometimes that as conservatives, as citizens within this great movement of people who love this country, who love our rights, who love our liberties, we may disagree from time to time, but we need to remember that there's more that unites us than divides us. We need to be out there looking for people who can agree with us, who can join our cause. We have to do better, and that means we have to start a national dialogue. That means we have to involve our friends, our neighbors, our aunts, and our uncles, even those that are kind of odd or annoying. We have to persuade them, even at family reunions. By the way, this is about the size of a small family reunion in Utah. We have to persuade them that sitting back and doing nothing is not acceptable. Not when the federal government is trying to take over our health care system. Not when the federal government is requiring us to work 2, 3, or 4 months out of the year just to pay our federal taxes. Not when it's incurring $17 trillion of debt and adding to that debt at a rate of $1 trillion a year. Not when it imposes $2 trillion a year in regulatory compliance costs. Not on our watch, not under our Constitution, not on your life. This has been an interesting week in Washington. It's been a difficult week, and it's not over. I'm headed right back to Washington in just a little while after I shake a few hands here today. I intend to do so, thank you. At times like these, we can feel discouraged. And I'm right there with you in feeling discouraged at times, but we can't let ourselves dwell on that very long. There's too much to be done. It may appear to us at some times, at some moments, that Washington has the upper hand. But fear not, because the American people will always have the final word. Now let's take that word, let's pass it around, let's send it back to Washington, and let's win this battle. Thank you very much.